Hello and welcome to Family Meeting, where we will be discussing the urgent needs for the improved pay and working conditions for caregivers, particularly focusing on our family members in the Latinx community. My name is Cristela Alonzo, and today I am joined by the founder of Justice for Migrant Women, Monica Ramirez, and home care worker and member of the Equality Home Care Co-op, Susie Rivera. To kick things off, I want to ask both of you, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with caregiving? Like, how has it affected your life? And Susie, we'll begin with you.
I am a 64-year-old Hispanic female, and I've been doing this kind of work, a caregiver, since 1984. I originally got into this kind of work when I went to go help my grandmother in Colorado. I lived in Texas and I relocated to Denver to care for my elderly grandfather who was very sickly. I went in there and relieved my grandmother because it was putting a lot of stress on her. So I guess I kind of learned that firsthand from her and her experience and my experience of doing that with helping out our family member. And I saw what a dire need it was for us to be there, how we put the stress and pressure off of them, taking care of their elderly spouse. I've done all kinds of work. I've been a CNA for hospice. I did hospice work 10 years. I've done nursing home, private sitting. I've done all aspects of caregiving.
And Monica, what about you? Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and it made me think about when I was growing up. My grandmother took care of us, and she was a monolingual Spanish speaker, and for the longest time, she was our caregiver. And we would go to her house, we'd walk to school. We were latchkey kids eventually, right? So for me, it's always been about our families taking care of us. And when our families weren't available, we figured out how to walk ourselves to school and get ourselves home. And so that's it. For as long as I can remember, caregiving has been about our family stepping in to help support each other and to sort of help raise the kids. And I think a lot of Latinx community members can relate to that. But now that I'm a mother, I actually found myself in the same position. When I was going to grad school, my little boy was only 1, and I wasn't sure how I was going to manage it. And one of my tias came to live with me while I was in grad school to help me care for my son. And so for me, it continues to be the same story as when I grew up. It was our family stepping into care. And now I still very much depend on my family to help care for my son, to help raise my son. And, I think probably one of the biggest challenges that we've confronted has been, I think, like many during COVID, as I was home working and also trying to homeschool my child, and we couldn't see our family. So it was just the two of us trying to manage, and my husband, who was actually working out of state at the time, would come in. So I feel like I've experienced the full range of depending on the family to step in and care, but then also understanding what it feels like when we don't have the regular childcare available to us, including not having our family to depend on.
I connect with what you're saying on the family. It's always been considered that the family is a unit. We're like a team, right? And wherever you need the team member to go, you'll find a team member that shows up for the cause, whatever it is, right? And I was a latchkey kid too. And, it's funny because for me, but I also love how you explain when you said homeschooling, I forget, how, yes, there are parents, so many parents that did have that situation where you depended on the support of people like family members. And then what do you do when you literally can't have that access, And it's especially with someone like you who is very busy when on a normal pace, and then to have to do the education, responsibility, the haul for your son. I mean, that's a lot. For me, my experience with caregiving was that, my sister took care of me when I was a kid. She was kind of like a second mother. And then when she started having kids, she couldn't afford childcare. So for me, since I was about in 7th grade, every summer, I would go to Dallas in the summers to help take care of her kids, And then when she got a job later on, when she was married, I moved in with her. I was the tia that moved in to help take care of the kids. I helped take care of my mom when she got sick. My mom passed away. And even recently this year, my sister had a stroke in July. And She lives in Dallas. I live in LA. I was fortunate enough to be able to go back to Dallas and take care of her. Man, it's kind of like, it's almost like in our family, it's this thing where someone's going to be there for you. You know, what we don't talk about enough is the psychological effects that caregiving has on us, because if we're the person caregiving, or if we're in that situation, there's a lot of responsibility and mental ties that go with that. It's a lot of struggle.
What you're saying resonates with me so much, because my husband was so shocked that one of my tias would come and live with us for a period of time. And actually, it was a different tia was supposed to come, but she got cancer and was diagnosed with cancer. She's fine now, but at the time she's gotten sick. And so another tia jumped in, and he was like, "What's happening?" He was so confused. I'm like, "That's just how it works. Like, what do you mean?"
It's kind of like it's like you have a team roster and you're like, "Look, that tia's out, bring in substitute tia." Like, it's a shorthand, and it's crazy,
Care can wait because my family deserves fair home care.
Es una inversión para crear nuevos trabajos esenciales.
Care can't wait because my community depends on it.
Families like mine and millions of other families out there need paid family leave so that they don't have to make those tough choices. I encourage people to really look at the need for paid family leave.
Care can't wait because my family depends on it.
Necesitamos seguir brindando nuestro servicio, necesitamos tener un mejor salario. Las mujeres latinas, las trabajadoras latinas, somos seres humanos que tenemos mucho para dar, y las personas adultas que cuidamos lo reciben, los niños nos necesitan.
The care infrastructure is about our country's family values. We have the unique opportunity to lift up our families and our economy. We must act now.
It's incredible to think the Latino community, among Black, AAPI, Indigenous communities, like, we fuel the care economy. Yet there's so much need for improved pay and working conditions. Why is this, and what can be done to change this? Susie, we'll start with you.
I think we have to make our community more aware of what we contribute when we're out there giving care. We don't have the luxury of working from our home. This is a 24/7 job. We work holidays, we work nonstop, and taking care of ourselves is another thing too. We keep doing it that we're caring for others, that we neglect ourselves. But I feel like the work is needed, and we just have to get out there and do it. But we have to also be in the face of people and letting them know what kind of work we do, what it entails. Our job has always been essential. I feel we have always been an essential part of our community, of our families that we take care of. Except I feel the pandemic brought everything out more. It made it more aware of people, the work that we do.
And Monica, what do you think?
I mean, I think that we have to name the fact that, as you mentioned, many of the people who are holding these jobs are people of color, many women of color. And this is a system, it's been a racist system. It's been a system that has devalued the people who are providing the care. My good friends and partners at National Domestic Workers Alliance, they always talk about caregiving and domestic work as being the work that makes all of their work possible. And that's so true, but this work has been undervalued. And it isn't just by everyday people. Even members of Congress have not valued this work. And so I think that we have to continue to remind people that this work has been effectively legislated against by our political leaders. People who are doing caregiving work have not been given the same rights and benefits for their work. They've not been given the same pay. They don't have the same leave. They don't have the same security. And that isn't a new problem. That's a generations old problem.
That again brings up a really good point where, the working conditions doesn't match what the job entails. And again, it's interesting when you start thinking about it, because it's not like you're babysitting someone, or you're just like it's not like you're on your phone all day while somebody's taking a nap, or it's like it's such an such a big haul, such a big like responsibility that I don't think that people, if you don't spend the day seeing what a caregiver does, I think that it's easy to guess and assume what it is because most people aren't familiar with that life.
Es demasiado tiempo y necesitamos que el gobierno también se ocupe de nosotros, personas como yo, que somos de Bolivia, que personas de otros países también necesitamos que vean la dignidad y el valor del trabajo que nosotros realizamos en este país cuidando a sus seres queridos.
I want to live in a country where people are not afraid that they cannot afford to or will get fired if they care for a sick loved one, if they care for a child, if they need to take a day off to go to the doctor or get vaccinated.
Bills don't stop when you get a diagnosis. We need time to care for ourselves and others through the entire healing process. That's why care can't wait, and we need paid leave for all, now.
This is the work that enables work. And the Build Back Better agenda includes historic investments in childcare, in caregiving, and in the child tax credit, which would go to nearly every parent in America and help with the incredibly hard work of raising children. Care can't wait.
So when you have a workforce like caregivers that are being underpaid, maybe they're being paid off the books, or maybe, they're not getting all the benefits, they don't have the retirement, they don't have all the other things that they need, that has a cumulative effect over the course of their lives, right? And then what does that mean? We also pass it on to our families, because if we don't have enough to save, if we don't have enough to support ourselves, then that means we also don't have those resources for our family. I don't know, Unidos recently came out with a report, and in that report they said that like 36% of Latinas didn't have enough food in their homes. For Latinas who were interviewed in the report, I think only had about $500 in the bank to count on as a reserve. And that was only half of the Latinas who were interviewed. So we understand that these gaps are creating major problems today for people to basically be able to just meet our basic needs, but also that it impacts our family for generations when we don't have the money that we need. And that is directly related to not having the laws that provide us with the resources, including things like leave to take care of ourselves and our family if we get sick.
In my family, I was never taught to take care of myself. We didn't know, my mom, we didn't have food, but my mom worked in a Mexican food restaurant, and it was that thing where she would never dare take any food from the restaurant because that was her job, and so it was interesting that her job was to feed people when she was struggling to feed us. And, when you do have that lack of money or the lack of resources, and the lack of access, people don't understand that the family unit grows up with that struggle and they understand life in a different circumstance, So for me, it wasn't until I got my own TV show on the air that I got health insurance for the first time, and it's that thing where, and I had to win the lottery to be able to afford, health insurance, but also learning to just know that basic essential things are not luxuries, and that's a struggle I think that so many of us have, is that we think that we consider certain things luxuries. My mom used to think that dreaming big was a luxury, because to her it was about survival, and when you grow up in survival mode, you realize that a lot of times you're kind of selling your ability short because that's how you were programmed, and it's not a bad thing, it's just circumstances, so it's like, yeah, if the politicians don't make policy changes that can help caregivers in this situation, how do we improve life? It's
how do we survive? Because we're talking about dollars and cents that are required to meet our basic needs, but there's a trauma that people are holding from being in this place of always feeling like they don't have enough or they can't make it, right? And we hold trauma in our bodies, and we pass that on to our loved ones too. So there are many costs that come from the fact that political leaders have made a decision to exclude certain people, including caregivers, from having basic rights and benefits that other people afford.
There's hundreds of billions of dollars of investment into the care economy that is currently being negotiated in Congress. Uh, I hate saying that, but that's the fact. It's like, we know that the Latinx community would greatly benefit from this investment. So, can you share what the impact of these funds would have? Susie, what do you think?
They would be very, very beneficial for us. We could get the protective equipment we need to do our work. We could get better pay. We could get better wages. Our community, our society, we're living longer. We need to get more people to gravitate towards this kind of work. If nobody wants to work it if you don't have benefits, nobody wants to work it if you don't have decent pay. And if everything, with our administration, if everything passes and we get all that money, you're going to get people that want to do this kind of work. I'm thinking about myself. I'm coming up on that age where I'm going to need care of myself. Who's going to be there to care for me?
This bill that's being negotiated in Congress would actually provide resources for families to be able to get before care and after care for their children, would be able to get resources to, pay for child care. And then, of course, those Head Start dollars, we cannot underestimate the importance of those. In the farm worker community that I come from, Migrant Head Start is a very important place for children to be able to attend. And that also means for kids who come from the farm worker community, that will keep them out of the fields. That will keep them safe from having to be in the fields where there's heavy machinery and dangerous pesticides. So, this bill is enormous, and it's gonna bring so many good things. But we need to make sure that the package includes all the requirements to make sure that care is available for those who need care, and that those who are in the position and skilled to provide care are also supported to be able to do those jobs.
Look, you're championing caregivers, but how are both of you making sure you take care of yourselves? Because we're talking so much about trauma and mental and psychological, that's given, but also working to champion this cause. So what are you doing? Monica, we'll start with you.
Well, I think that exercise, eat better, all the things that people have always told us that we need to do. But in this space of being at home for a couple of years now, because of the pandemic, I've actually been able to try to practice some of those things. So, I'm just holding the people I love close and trying to do the best I can to take care under the circumstances that we're in.
And Susie, what about you?
You got to know your limits. You got to know when to stop and say, hey, I got to regroup. Don't get burned out. You have to do things too. Right now, I take long drives. I go with the family, get everybody in the vehicle, and we just take a long drive on Sundays.
Well, that's awesome.
Cristela, what about you?
It doesn't work this way. It doesn't work this way.
You tried to sneak out.
You know what? Actually, that's something that I've been working on right before the lockdown happened. I started going to therapy because I needed to learn that I was a priority. Because again, when my mom passed away, I'm the youngest of four, and I became the matriarch of the family. So I'm the one that cares for all my family. And when that happens, I had a tendency to make myself last, and now talking to someone, it made me realize that, it's kind of like the safety procedure in the plane, right? You got to put the mask on yourself before you help others. So I started hiking, and I just started kind of going off by myself to do these hikes where I like being quiet, and I just like the walks, and I really love being outdoors. And it reminds me of my mom's rancho, and it's a really comforting feeling. And I realized the thing that I'm trying to take care of the most is making sure that I'm taken care of, which means not saying no to myself so much. That's tough, so, but you got to deprogram a lot of years. But honestly, thank you to Monica Ramirez and Susie Rivera for joining this deeply important conversation. And thank you to the National Domestic Workers Alliance and Caring Across Generations for facilitating this family meeting. And for any caregivers that are out there watching this conversation, I want you to know what you do is amazing. The job that you do whether it be family members, what you do as a profession, what have you, it doesn't go unnoticed. I want you to know that people understand what you're doing, how you're doing it. And right now we're at a place where we need everybody, not only in the government, but in the country, to understand what you go through. And we need to make sure that you are taken care of, not only now, but for the future as well, meaning you and your family. So I think I can speak for all of us here when I say that we are honored to be in community with you. So to learn more about the importance of investing in care infrastructure, please visit caringacross.org and domesticworkers.org. Thank you very much. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you.